This this title is based on a book by a postmodern critic, and you get special points from me if you know what it's referring to. So um, when I presented about a year ago now for an e-learning award, our department was shortlisted for one of the judges, who is from an L&D background, asked me a really interesting question, um, which was this: what is the hardest thing about working with academics? Nice spicy question. I said, in our work in distance learning, the area that by far we get the most resistance from our dearly beloved academics is not in developing the assessments, not in the webinars, and definitely not in the videos, in which they tend to show a lot of interest in. No, the area where we get the most resistance is in writing test questions. Um, but even the kind of the nice ones will say, surprised that we were asking them to write these test questions. Isn't testing horrible? Um, and to avoid exaggerating, I don't want to exaggerate, but most, to be honest, just get on with it. But some, for valid reasons, express concern, suggesting that learning from tests is inert, a la Alfred North Whitehead, kill and drill, or inauthentic. Um, and so many are concerned, yet they all, in the end, find that the hard work of writing these quiz questions pays off, as it is in the current state of educational research, one of the best tools that we have. So this is a really interesting study. The research on learning from testing is nearly a century old. One of the best ways to illustrate the power of testing is with this lovely study by Roediger and Karpika in 2006, where they separated three groups, learning a set of 30 vocabulary word pairs. The first group looked at the set of word pairs, and then they simply they studied them, they restudied them again, then restudied them, and then were tested on them. The next group studied them, restudied, and then did a test, just simply, what can I remember, of these word pairs. And then the last group studied the word pairs and then tested themselves. No feedback, just a test. And what they found was interesting. So what do you think is going to happen? What are the results going to be? The first test was after a 5-minute delay. And guess what? The people who did the restudying outperformed the people who tested, because cramming works. The content was fresh in their minds, and the people who spent their time testing themselves did about, what is it, like 10-15% worse than the people who just simply studied. However, after a week, the shape of these results took the reverse form, and the people who had simply restudied had forgotten what looks like about 2/3 of what they'd been just looking at. And whereas the people who self-tested, only their memory of the content compared to the 5-minute test was only marginally less. So part of what this has shown is that I guess, first of all, that the effort of retrieving something from memory creates stronger memories, and this is what Robert Bjork calls a desirable difficulty. But also very precisely that testing, the retrieval practice, reduces forgetting. Roediger, Smith, and Putnam broke this down even further into 10 nice reasons to use testing for learning. So first, as we've seen, testing aids later retention. Second, testing helps students and teachers identify gaps in knowledge. So where something is wrong, you can go and further investigate it. Third, testing causes students to learn more from the next testing episode. So it activates further learning. Testing produces better organization of knowledge. Testing improves transfer of knowledge to new contexts. So far from actually testing being, inert knowledge, this knowledge is quite meaningful and dynamic. 6, testing can facilitate retrieval of information that was not tested. 7, testing improves metacognitive monitoring. So students have a much clearer idea of what they know and what they don't know. 8, testing prevents interference from prior material when learning new material. So often what they found in tests is when someone studies A and then goes on to study B, studying B actually interferes with their study of A, and that testing ameliorates this phenomenon. 9, testing provides feedback to instructors, so they know what to teach to, and then 10th, testing encourages students to study. So what they found is that when students are tested regularly, they take a more active and regular approach to study. But that's not all. There is an important 11th reason to use testing, and that's that testing engages students. And this is a big reason for us at Bayes Business School. So this was a really cool study by Spooner, Moulton, and Schachter, where they looked at 2 groups, a test group and a restudy group, based on videos where videos have been broken apart and coupled with either a test or a restudy session. So the test group watched a 15-minute video, or actually I think it was a 5-minute video, then did a test. The other group watched the video and then reviewed the video. And this was broken into segments, 2, 3 on, and then to a last video, which the test group watched the video and then was tested on that video. And then the restudy group watched that video and then was tested on that last video as well. And what they found was they did some really cool, interesting stuff with this study. The first kind of interesting thing they studied was mind wandering. So what they looked at was they would, at random points, ask the student if their mind was wandering or not, and then the student would report. And what they found was that the test group reported significantly less mind wandering than the restudy group. Also the test group reported more note taking, but I think the most striking is that was the test performance in that final video. So the test students performed twice as well as the restudy students, which suggests that this pattern, this instructional pattern of watching the video and being tested on it, trained the students, as it were, to focus more on the videos as they were watching them. And this is exactly a pattern that we use at Bayes Business School. So this is an example of one of our videos, which is coupled with a quiz, which in our team, James Stewart and Chris Skinsley lovingly put together. This is what one of our quiz questions might look like, simple multiple choice question. And here is some of the feedback that they might get. So some more advantages of quiz questions that are worth thinking about. First, it's a low-cost interaction for students. So we know from Jacob Nielsen that people online tend to be pretty brutal and assessors of cost-benefit analysis, and we see this with students when students see an immediate benefit to the activity with a low cost to them, they're more likely to do it. Next, this is a point I got from Daisy Christodoulou, which is that simple multiple choice or automated questions are unambiguous and easier to triage. So there's lots of benefits to authentic assessment, but when someone does something wrong, it can sometimes be very difficult to actually understand where something went awry. Whereas in a quiz, because of the kind of simplicity of the question, it's very straightforward whether they sort of understood it or didn't. Students also tend to engage because the alignment is very clear between simply between the teaching and the activity itself. So students immediately understand what the point is. As we've seen in some case studies, these activities can support further complex activities. So in a reading group that Shashi and Mira Vogel and I do, ages ago, we looked at a case study from Harvard's humanities department. I think it was in their English department, where they used quizzes with undergraduates, and what the students reported was that it was great, because they would do these quizzes before they would go into a discussion of a text that they were about to discuss, and that they were able to have a higher quality discussion because a lot of the facts were established. So for us, this test drive has been a long one. For our global finance MSc, we've written probably about 1,080 questions. For the global MBA, easily 1,200, probably like 1,600 nowadays. And so, what have we learned from all this? Well, there's three main things that we've learned. First, that writing test questions is hard work. It's not easy, doesn't come natural, and there's a lot of resistance. Second, that it's subtle craft. Writing quiz questions is a skill, and there's a lot to it. It can seem subtle or like it should be straightforward, but it's not. But third, that it is an engaging teaching. So first point, writing test questions is hard work. It's laborious. It takes many academics much more work than they had expected. Some do breeze through it, but many others find it a really tremendous amount of work. And I know that this is, for example, what other academics will warn each other about. And it seems that mentally, it can be hard work as well. So all of a sudden you're asked to disassemble your teaching, as it were, and create the questions from the nuts and bolts, thinking not just of the components of your lecture, but all the things with which it could be confused. And this is a difficult task. Second, writing quiz questions is subtle craft, and this is it can seem like writing quiz questions can seem like equal parts science and art. So, for example, great quiz questions have a variety of question types. There's multiple choice, true and false, short essay questions, fill in the blank. Great quiz questions have clear feedback. Great quiz questions have questions that use examples, that apply the knowledge. They're not just repeating necessarily what was said in the lecture, but are actually getting students to use it in different contexts. Great quiz questions have credible distractors. So they're actually based on things that people might actually think. Great quiz questions have simplicity. They don't have a lot of, they're not tests of language skills. They're tests of knowledge. So they should have a kind of a straightforwardness to them. And they should have parallelism, which seems like a tedious point, but actually is something upon which a lot of the success of quiz questions hangs. These mistakes are our best teachers. So even though looking at examples and seeing their faults is easy, writing them is far more difficult. So here's an example of something that I would often see when academics write quiz questions is like this just an academic example. So for Jacques Derrida, différance means the difference between one thing and another. To disagree with someone, or see both a difference and an act of deferring, to characterize the way in which linguistic meaning is created rather than given. It represents a critical outlook concerning the relationship between text and meaning. So basically, like what you see is like two like crassly, incredibly like simplistic answers, and then like one like super nuanced answer with like advanced vocabulary. And it's like, of course people are going to say C because it sounds smarter. And so I think that, and this is, something that like, this is why we have to edit quiz questions. Because writing those, really like a lot of the quality of good multiple choice questions is actually not in writing the answer, but in writing the distractors. So it's not easy, but we know that writing test questions is engaging teaching. So again, going back to our course page for one of our courses that Chris Kinsley and James Stewart lovingly create, if you look at activities 2 and 3, 4 here, these are ones that contain quiz questions, and they're all 100% completed. Again, I did an analysis, and if you look at, these are our activity types that we run in our distance courses. The activities with quizzes are near 100% completion, and which based on the things I've told you shouldn't be a surprise. So looking forward, I think for us, having made a big dive into the world of quiz questions, we need more analysis, and we're doing that now. So we need to find the troublesome questions, and those are the questions that either too many people are getting right, or too many people are tending to be getting wrong. And we get a lot of feedback from students because they do take the quiz questions seriously. So if anything's a major problem, it comes up straight away. And then I think thirdly, the kind of the deeper work is trying to get more quiz questions that apply concrete examples, that use scenarios, that actually have to apply the concepts in a different context. So it's not just about remembering what the academic said, but remembering the kind of the deeper truth of what they said and applying it. So to go back to the question I was asked by the judge for the e-learning awards, the toughest thing about working with academics is getting them to write quiz questions. But as we have seen, it is totally worth it. It's tough work. it's subtle craft, but it's very powerful learning and it's engaging learning. And I sort of didn't want to do this, but in the 90s, people used to say about pizza, like that even when it's bad, it's good. And, you know, they'd say X, like certain thing is like pizza because even when it's bad, it's good. Well, in a way, quiz questions are like pizza because even when they're not very good, they're still great. And um, but we're at a point, you know, at Bayes where we're trying to go from and take some of our questions, which are like frozen Iceland pizza, to make them like the Neapolitan Sacracuore, like beautiful pizza. And I think in a way, maybe this is part of like what, you know, distance learning is really kind of under an undersung song, which is that so much of excellent distance learning is made of these things which may seem a bit pedestrian or basic, and turning them through knowledge and craft into interesting, transformative, um, rich, interesting, transformative experiences for everyone involved. Um, that's it.